10 years public ad campaign has been running now, and it's gone through all sorts of iterations, but at this point it's kind of like an umbrella organization for my own personal work, for large-scale kind of civil disobedience projects that I run, and things of that nature.
Is there a larger concept besides just taking over public ad spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have any sort of... I have issues with with advertising in general, right? The manipulative qualities of advertising, but you know, we live in a capitalist society and we understand that's the engine. So you kind of accept advertising, but there's a certain space we want to keep very democratic and keep very non-commercial, and that's public space. And so I take issue with it in that one environment. And most of the reason I take issue with it just is because by nature advertising has an interest in kind of overwhelming every other form of communication, and they have the funds and the resources to do so. So very quickly you see public space kind of being a commercial a space as opposed to a public space, right? As opposed to something that could handle, you know, community murals, street art, public art in general. I see outdoor advertising kind of standing in the way of us really being allowed to use that space. I have a tendency to work with the motifs that are abundant in advertising, which are often the female figure, and then really, you know, kind of banal stuff like the weaving patterns and graphics, which are atypical of advertising. I mean, that's one of the things that's always problematic, right? You put a piece up in an advertising space and people are so conditioned to see advertising there that they don't even register that there's a piece of artwork or there's been a takeover, and so I'm kind of consistently trying to fight that, get them to see that there's something different about that, so then they can make a decision on their own about whether or not they like it, or whether or not, you know, I should be allowed to take over that space, or they should, or the advertising's appropriate, etc. So yeah, the imagery ends up trying to be opposite of what advertising would end up being. I have a set of like little keys I've made over the years, and then ones I've bought. Most of the phone booth stuff is like anti-vandal keys. So there's like 2 or 3 of these that'll open most of the advertising in New York City. This one I made for like these Metro fuel panels, and there's a few other ones. This one I made for the digital subway entrance ad things. And you know, most of it's just kind of popping it open, and then you rip out an advertisement and throw in a piece of artwork. Right. And you know, you're in front of the spot for anywhere between 15 and 30 seconds, and you're gone. So that stuff I don't normally, you know, disguise myself for. But if I'm taking apart phone booths, I'll wear an orange vest, and I'll rent a van and make it look a little more official. I mean, I've been caught before, but it's never that big a deal. It's much different than kind of graffiti or street art, where you're kind of destroying like an individual's private property, whereas this is like a big ad company, and the cops don't seem to care. They understand the kind of proliferation of advertising is something that maybe people aren't happy with, maybe they're not happy with. So usually it's either the cops are either complicit in my action, or they're sorry but they have to write me a summons or something like that.
Dark all around you. All you need is love, I know. All your doubts and fears.
Do you think it's a more considered form of vandalism than, say, something very traditional such as graffiti?
No, I think, I mean, buffing advertising is actually quite it's almost not vandalism. you know, one of the things in particular is that a lot of this stuff can just be covered and replaced. Whereas, like, you know, if you tag the side of somebody's building, they got to come out there with fucking a spray washer or whatever to remove that thing. That's a pain in the ass.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Do you feel what you're doing is more considered?
Oh yeah, much more considerate. And not to mention that I think that there's a politics behind it that makes the vandalism worthwhile, right? Like, are we really gonna get all up in arms over like a few buffed ads when the potential benefits of thinking about what's happening there can have such a kind of larger effect, right? I mean, I think graffiti's use of public space is really interesting, and there is a politics built into it. But whether or not the graffiti community embraces those politics is kind of up for debate. But with anti-ad work, I mean, in order to do it, you have to understand the politics of what you're doing. Like, that act is taking over advertising space is more political, because if you just wanted to see your imagery on the streets, we paste it in a back alley somewhere or whatever. If you're going to go out and do something illegal, it helps to have 100 other people doing it at the same time.